All right, here we're going to start our Chapter 2 notes, and we're looking at Section 2.1 today. And first we always start with our learning targets, and we're starting right up here. I can write and graph linear inequalities, and also some of this one, I can write linear inequalities from graphs, so we're going to go both directions. So the sheet that you're going to need looks something like this that you have. Go ahead and take a minute and fold it, and we're going to cut it into flaps and start filling these things out. Also, you're not actually going to need color. I just do mine in color just because it looks better and it's easier for me to follow. So that's really up to you. So the first symbol that we're really looking at is, we've seen it a lot before, and that's our equals sign. Okay, so go ahead and put that on the top one. So when you open up your flap, we're going to see the meaning. The meaning of that is equal to. So in one of the key phrases that you'll see here that we use is. So when we're dealing with word problems, and we're going to be dealing with word problems, you'll see the word is. Whenever you see that word is, that's where that equal sign goes. So our example here that we're going to be looking at and graphing is x equals 3. So when we have something like that, we know it's equals. And what it looks like on the graph. Here's where we're going to be graphing everything on a number line starting today. Okay? So here I'm going to have a 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, -1. And it doesn't really matter where our number line looks like, but we just have to make sure that we have our pieces that we need in it. So when I have this is equal to, that means I just have a dot, but it's closed in. Okay? That equal to part means I have a closed in circle. Okay? So now let's look at our next one. Here we're going to have our next symbol, and it looks something like this. Okay? This one is, we're going to say less than. Okay. Another phrase that you see often when we're dealing with word problems is fewer than. That's another way to say it as well. We're going to give ourselves a couple key phrases in here so that we can also see it when we're dealing with our word problems as well, because we're really going to deal with that as well. So our example here is going to be x is less than a -1. So on my number line, right, I'm going to have -1, -2. So when it's less than, just like this, I have an open circle wherever this number is. So an open circle, at -1, okay, so I don't fill in my circle, and then I shade everything that's less than that, or to the left of that. So then my number line is going to look something like this. And I'm going to have an arrow at the end because it continues on and on and on forever in that direction. Okay, so that's what less than would look like. So now let's look at our next one, is we have less than or equal to. Okay, so that's our meaning right there. Less than or equal to. So some other key phrases that we could see when we're dealing with word problems in this is at most. That's another phrase that you'll see a lot with the same kind of symbol. And also is no more than. Those are kind of our phrases that will trigger us to know that this is what we're really looking at. So the example that we're going to graph here is x is less than or equal to 5. So on my number line, here I see I have an equal to at the bottom. So I know that that means I'm going to have a closed circle at this number. So I draw my circle and I close it. When it was just less than, I had an open circle, but now that it's equal to, I have a closed circle, and I see that I shade to the left of that, so everything less than that. So we're going to go ahead and shade this direction. Okay. So our next symbol that we're going to look at is like that. So that one is greater than. So that's our meaning right there. Greater than. Another phrase that we see often with this one is more than. Okay, so you're going to see that often as well. So the example we're going to graph here is x is greater than 0. Okay, so again here, so just like we had in our less than the one, I don't have an equal, so I'm going to have an open circle on my number, and then it's greater than, and my arrow is pointing this way. So it's going to shade to the right on this one. Our next symbol that we have looks like this. And I bet you guessed it, this one is greater than or equal to. Some other phrases, is at least. And then also is no less than. Oops. Those are some key phrases that you might see when we're dealing with those word problems. So that'll help as well. So the example here we're going to graph is x is greater than or equal to 10. So because it has that equal to sign, that equal to part, I have a closed circle on that value, and then I'm going to shade to the right of that, just like that. Okay? So then there's one final symbol that we are going to talk about that you'll see sometimes, and it's something that looks like this. Okay? This means not equal to. Okay? So we've talked equal to, we've talked greater than, less than. This is what we will say when it's not equal to. So our example here, we're going to say x is not equal to 2. So how would I graph something like that? So here, since it's not equal to this, I have an open circle on it, which always means it's not equal to, but then I shade everything else. So I'm going to shade in both directions. Okay? So that's kind of important there. So now we've looked through all of our symbols and what they all mean and where we can use them. One really key piece of information that I want you to find a little bit of space on this paper, on this page, to write yourself a little note, is that we're always going to go variable and then our symbol, which is one of these, and then our constant. And that's the number. If we go in this order, the direction that this arrow points tells us the direction that we need to shade. So for example, you'll notice here, I have x, which is my variable, then my symbol, then my constant. So x is less than -1. Do you see how this arrow is pointing the same direction as this arrow that I shade? So if you go in this order, this will be the direction that your arrow goes and the direction that you shade. So you want to always try and get it to be in this order so that you can kind of follow these and it'll help you determine which direction to go. Really, that's all of our information for this section. You are going to be now taking information like this and graphing it. You're going to be given some graphs and say, okay, so now write my inequality from my graph. You're also going to be given some word problems, and that's why we gave ourselves several key phrases of what they're going to be really looking at. So now it's time for you to go into your homework and start working and practicing on that. And please let me know whenever you get stuck or have questions.